Hey everybody, it's Sharmel. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another becoming video. So if you guys are familiar or you enjoy my transparency talk videos, this new series is very similar. We're still going to be transparent. However, I did feel like it just needed a new, more evolved name. So this series is just a continuation of my own personal journey and things that I'm doing to improve my life and essentially become the best version of myself, while also offering tools that will help you become the best version of you. And so our topic for today is addictions. So let's get right into it.
The sun shines on all of my glory. My flaws don't look so bad at all. What was I so afraid of?
So a lot of times when we hear the word addiction, I feel like we automatically assume like alcohol and substance abuse. And while that may be one of the most common addictions, you can still essentially be addicted to anything. And when you really dissect it, many of us are walking around as functioning addicts. And so addiction is simply defined as a strong inclination to do, use, or indulge in something repetitively. It's a compulsive habit or behavior that can have harmful effects on one's physical, psychological, and social well-being. And so as far as like modern times, when I think of the word addiction, one of the main ones that I think of is like social media, the internet. I feel like people will literally sell their souls for some validation and attention on the internet. Food is also another big one. I don't think many people realize how addicted we are to the foods that we eat. Many of us are addicted to certain lifestyles. You can be addicted to people, to sex. And like I said, a lot of the times addiction is more common than we realize. We wonder why like so many people are walking around with anxiety or just stress beyond capacity. And while some of it and a lot of it may be out of our control, because as I say in all my videos, life be lifing. I get it. Life be lifing hard. It's easy to feel the weight of life. However, another part or component of our anxieties or our stressors or our complacency, our stagnancy, a lot of it is also rooted in our dependence and codependence on these various things that we are addicted to. And so on my own personal journey of just trying to get myself together, get my life together, I had to come to a realization that I personally had a lot of unhealthy attachments to certain things that were slowing down my progress. Whether it was using food and alcohol to cope with just life's uncertainty, or whether it was my obsession of trying to obtain like this picture perfect life or lifestyle, I had to acknowledge that I had an unhealthy attachment and addiction to these various things. And so the first step for fixing these addictive behaviors is I had to admit it, right? Admission is always going to be your first step. You can't fix something that you don't acknowledge as a problem. So I had to admit that I had a problem with the way that I utilize certain things, or the way that I indulge or overindulge in certain things, activities, behaviors. And then I also had to acknowledge that I needed help. And in general, I think of myself as a pretty level-headed, self-aware person. However, in that admission process, I also had to acknowledge that the plans that I was trying to create, that also wasn't working. And this obsessive behavior that I had was really slowing me down from being whatever it is that I was trying to be, or to accomplish whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish. So the first step is that you have to admit that you have an unhealthy attachment to XYZ, whatever that may be for you. And so it's very similar to if you were to go to like an AA meeting or some type of therapy for addiction. The first thing that they usually have you do is say, my name is such and such and I'm an addict. And it's the same thing. I had to have that process with myself. Like, okay, Sharmel, you have very unhealthy habits right now. You have very overindulging tendencies in certain things. And although I wanted better for myself, I also had to take ownership in the roles that I played with like my anxiety or self-doubt or self-sabotage, right? A lot of those things were rooted in my over obsession or my addiction to certain things within my life. And then the next thing that I had to do was I had to mourn. I had to feel and express that sadness. I had to grieve. Whether we want to admit it or not, many of us find pleasure in some of these addictions. And grieving is a big part because many of our addictions, especially in modern times, they're not always like innately bad. When they stand alone and they're isolated, the thing itself is not necessarily bad, but it's our struggle with the overindulgence is what makes it bad. And so a big part of me, I had to grieve that I enjoy these things, right? I enjoy doing XYZ, but I know for my own growth and my progression that I can no longer indulge in XYZ if I want to grow like I want to. You know, I had to acknowledge and grieve that I'm even in this situation to begin with. And I tell you guys all the time about my journey and my own personal struggles and how, you know, a big part of like my early life, my 20s, you know, I was sold this dream of what life was supposed to be like, and I felt like if I did all of these things, if I checked all of these boxes, that it would render me the perfect life. And when that didn't happen, it caused me to be very angry. You know, it caused me to have a lot of resentment towards people, towards life, towards everything, towards myself. And so part of my grieving process was acknowledging that I'm even in this predicament to begin with, because I felt like I was supposed to have it all together and have all these things that I wanted. And I feel like this is really kind of like an ongoing thing for me. I have to constantly mourn and grieve, like whether it's the person who I used to be, whether it's the person who I thought it would be, I had to grieve and release those feelings and express them so that I can fall in line with who I'm supposed to be. Because as long as I'm obsessing over what I'm supposed to be and not actually being who I'm supposed to be, I'm just delaying my progress more and more. And then the next thing that I had to do was I had to ask God to change my desires. Because I think it's one thing to acknowledge that what you're doing is counterproductive and you can make a plan to try to fix it, but at the end of the day, we're still human. We are creatures of habits. And so I know in my own life, you know, you make these plans and you try to put all this stuff together and it may work for a minute, but eventually you'll start to fall back into old habits. It's also like with food. Weight loss is a big one that a lot of people struggle with, me as well. And so it's like, you know what you're supposed to eat, you know how much you're supposed to exercise, you know all of these things that you're supposed to do to live a healthy life, to be healthy, to be fit, to be in shape. We know everything that we're supposed to do, but we still struggle with actually doing it. And I think that that's just our own just human nature, right? And so I have to literally ask God, like, I need you to just change it. Change my desires, make me want something else. Whether it's eating healthy, Lord, make me want this salad because I really don't want to eat it right now, right? Lord, make me be okay with sitting in the house and not going out every weekend and spending money on stuff that I don't need. Like, change my desires, because if I leave it in my own hand, if it's done by my own strength, like, I can't handle it. And I feel like this also goes back to my first point of admitting it, right? I need God to change these desires because I had to acknowledge that I find pleasure in some of my destructive behaviors. And therefore, I cannot depend on my own strength. And in the process of him changing my desires, which is also going to be an ongoing process, I had to also ask him to grant me with the patience, the grace, and the wisdom. Because sometimes change takes time. And that's simply what it is. As much as I would love to wake up tomorrow and have all of my problems fixed, I'm not saying it's impossible, but even if they are fixed by tomorrow, it's also going to take some change behavior to maintain it. It could be fixed by tomorrow, but if I fall back into my old habits, the problem will eventually present itself again. And so I need the patience because change takes time, and I need the grace because many of our addictions, when we think about addiction as a whole, a lot of it sometimes is genetic, right? Some of these bad habits that we have, they're passed down from generations to generation. And so in that process of trying to fix it, I also need to learn how to extend grace to myself, because these weren't even my problems to begin with. This is something that I inherited from way back yonder, and now I'm just the one fixing it. And then I also need the wisdom, because in the process of changing my behaviors, in the process of changing my desires, I also need some of those old behaviors and habits to be replaced with new, healthier habits, because it may be easy to cut off one addiction, but if you're still just taking that same energy and placing it in something new that you have an unhealthy relationship with, you're really not fixing it. And also, when it comes to wisdom, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to find and utilize resources. I'm no professional, you guys, right? But don't be afraid to seek actual professionals who have the licenses and the skills and the tools to help you beyond what you can sometimes do for yourself. Also, asking for help just means sometimes just getting an accountability partner, right? Confiding in someone close to you and letting them know, like, hey, I'm struggling with XYZ and I need you to help keep me accountable. Whether that's me just sending you a text message anytime I'm feeling anxious to fall back into old habits, or if that's even finding somebody to help you in the process of forming your new habits who you can enjoy those things with, right? Building a community that's going to help you live a better lifestyle overall. So yes, just don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to seek out your resources, because like I said, sometimes it's beyond our own strength. It's more than what we can do for ourselves, and sometimes you need that extra hand. And then lastly, just to close this video out, if anything, this journey has taught me the importance of just being vigilant and self-aware. It's really easy to have that like it could never be me mentality, and I think a lot of people have that it could never be me mentality, whether it's just their own arrogance or it's just flat out ignorance, right? But the reality is that not only can it be you, it is a lot of us. And the thing is that addiction is very subtle. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, a lot of the times when we think of addiction, we think of it like in the most extreme capacity. But a lot of the things that many of us are struggling with that's causing us the anxieties and stressors, they're embedded into this society. And so you don't have to be necessarily doing wrong to get involved and caught up in some type of addiction, right? Like I mentioned, social media is a huge one these days. But when we think of social media, when we think of the internet, it is heavily ingrained in our society. Like I think back to when I first started using the internet, like in middle school. At the time, like it had its purpose. It was this new thing. You have access to information, but it also had some elements of it for entertainment, but it was still very much like a isolated thing. Compared to now, so many people, as soon as they wake up, you just grab your phone. It's sometimes where like I'll pick up my phone and I don't even know what I picked it up for. Like those are addictive traits. And the thing is that it's hard not to be addicted to our devices when a large part of how we function in our day-to-day lives is surrounded by our phones, right? Whether it's communication of calling somebody, texting somebody, checking the email for business work, whether we're using it as a news outsource, whether we're using it as a calendar to manage our days, whether we need to check our bank account, transfer money, like everything we do now is integrated with the phone and technology. And so when I say addiction is subtle, it's things like that where we need it so much that we don't even really realize how addicted we are to these things until you no longer have it, right? Most people can't function without their phones for a significant amount of time. And I'm most people. Not that I don't want to be able to function, but when you get so used to having it, it's like, okay, like I said, you find yourself reaching for it when you don't even need it. Another thing I always think about is like alcohol. I wouldn't consider myself to be an alcoholic, but I had to realize that I was indulging in alcohol more than I want to. And again, it creeps up on you. When you think of a celebration, any type of celebration, 9 times out of 10, alcohol is going to be involved. Whether it's a birthday celebration, whether it's a promotion celebration, the first thing you say is, oh, let's go eat, let's go out, we got to celebrate, we can go eat and get drinks. Say you have a stressful day at work, so at the end of the day when you get home, you pour you a glass of wine, right? And again, like I said, life be life, and then before you know it, you having a stressful day every day, therefore you're drinking a glass of wine every day. So you may not be like strung out on the street somewhere, you are overindulging, and alcohol is just very hard on the body, period. I had to realize that a good portion of my weight gain was due to alcohol, so I had to learn how to cut back. Even if you go to restaurants, the first thing that they put in front of you is a drink menu as soon as you sit down. Just to reiterate my point, it's really important that we stay vigilant and self-aware, because a lot of the times we'll find ourselves indulging in these things and we don't even realize how often we're doing it. And a lot of times it's the little things that we think don't matter sometimes have the biggest impact on our overall well-being, and we don't even realize it. But yeah, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Also, if you have any video suggestions or topics that you want me to possibly talk about, definitely let me know. I do have like my next few videos planned out. However, I'm always open to taking suggestions. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on all of my social media platforms, Sharmel Lynette, and I will see you beautiful people in my next video. Bye.